Good morning. I never thought 32 degrees could feel so warm. Thank you everybody for coming out today. My name is Scott Hallam, and thank you for having me. I'm with Utica Midstream, General Manager for the Utica Shale, and I'll be talking to you today about our view of the Utica Shale. Before we get started, I'd like to thank the Economic Development and Finance Alliance of Tuscarawas County, also the Eastern Ohio Development Alliance as well, and thank you, Mike. That was a very stirring introduction. Really thankful to be part of Utica 2020. We think events like this are a great place to have a conversation about what the oil and gas industry is doing in the region and in Ohio and in the surrounding counties and communities. So we really appreciate being out here and being with you all today. I'm excited to discuss the Utica. The Utica is a world-class asset and a great state, my home state. Ohio has embraced the discovery in a responsible and stimulative way and fashion. And as a result, producers and developers like myself are able to invest significant sums of money into this development. And we can do that in large part because of the strict but reasonable and predictable work of the state administration and his agencies. Thank you. So as I mentioned, my discussion today will provide an E&P outlook on the Utica Shale. Although Access, the company I work for, does not own and operate assets in the upstream space, but rather the midstream space, we rely heavily upon the forecasts and plans of the upstream producers as it relates to our plans of investing capital. Now, before we can talk about the future, I think it's important that we appreciate Ohio's rich oil and gas heritage. I'm going to read a few things here. In 1883, going back quite some time, Ohio ranked 5th in the country for oil production at 47,000 barrels per day of production, roughly 1% of the country's output. By 1895, Ohio production had climbed to the number 1 position in the world as far as oil production at 24 million barrels. So Ohio has a long history in the oil and gas space, and it's very exciting to know that the Utica is bringing it back. As the industry developed, beyond the Drake Well and the oil plains of western Ohio, the heritage of conventional drilling continued. Just as recently as the mid-1980s, Ohio produced 160 billion cubic feet per day of natural gas, and also 13 million barrels of oil per day. So once again, Ohio has a long history of oil and gas presence here. Today, conventional drilling continues with over 12,000 wells that are producing in the state alone. Although that count is waning, and is why we're here today to talk about the Utica as a burgeoning development. We feel that the Utica and unconventional plays like that will continue to sustain Ohio as a major oil and gas player in the country and in the world. As we examine the present state of the Utica, it's important to note energy companies have extracted more than twice as much oil and gas in the third quarter of 2013 as they did all of 2012. This is according to figures from the state, ODNR. In the third quarter of 2013, 245 wells were drilled and completed, producing 1.3 million barrels of oil and also 33.6 billion cubic feet of gas. Very remarkable. And that's even with another 40 wells that weren't even connected that were drilled in that same period of time. These are all good signs for what the Utica represents to Ohio and to the region with such dramatic drilling and completion activities. So now let's move from upstream to midstream for just a quick moment. This slide shows the value chain of oil and gas industry, with upstream being to the left, midstream being that green section in the middle, and downstream to the right. Where Access currently resides is in the midstream portion, where we have gathering pipeline, compression facilities where we perform dehydration, other treatment of the gas, and then as well processing and fractionation. This is the main infrastructure associated with moving this rich Utica gas. The way that the gas comes out of the ground today, it's not capable of going to the burner tip, and there's value that can be extracted prior to going to the burner tip. And through the cooperative efforts between our upstream shippers and producers and with midstream, we're able to deliver that value back to them and deliver the product out to the consumer. So a little bit more about Access. Access is a growth-oriented midstream company. We provide gathering, compression, dehydration, processing, and fractionation services across the country, particularly in 9 areas. We're active in the Haynesville, the Barnett, the Marcellus, the Niobrara, and of course the Utica. We own and operate natural gas midstream assets with an average throughput of 4 billion cubic feet per day. We're one of the largest master limited partnerships in the country. We have 6,700 miles of pipeline that connects about 5,000 wells. And then more specifically about Ohio, Access in Ohio. We're working under 2 significant joint ventures. The first is Cardinal East Ohio, and the second is Utica East Ohio. We're investing approximately $1.9 billion into the eastern Ohio region by end of year 2015. We currently have about 305 miles of pipeline that's been installed. And we're pretty proud of that. None of that pipeline existed prior to August 2011. And further, we've installed over 70,000 horsepower, primarily in the Carroll County, Harrison County, and Jefferson County regions. Another fact that we're very proud of is we have about 100 employees that work in Ohio full-time. More than half of those employees are Ohio native residents. So we feel a strong connection with the Ohio market, myself being from Ohio. So a little bit about Cardinal. I had mentioned this is really the joint venture that moves gas from the wellhead all the way through to upstream of processing and fractionation. We have approximately 1.5 million acres that are dedicated to this joint venture. And again, that's primarily in Carroll County, Harrison, Jefferson, but also touching Columbiana and Guernsey counties as well. Of that 305 miles, Cardinal constitutes 265 miles of pipeline that's in service. Once again, none of it existed prior to August 2011, so we've been very active in the region in installing these facilities. Our average daily throughput is approximately 335 million cubic feet of gas per day. If anybody's curious, this right here, this is Darius Etkar. He's working in Carroll County. This is a pig that he's unloading from the pipeline. This is what we use to clean out our pipeline. The blessing and the benefit of the Utica can also rain havoc on a pipeline system. There's plenty of liquids that are in that gas that under changing temperatures and pressures will change from gas to liquid. And so we need to be on a continuous cleaning process of moving those liquids out of the pipeline and into storage tanks and into the market. And so this pigging process is what we use to do that. Next, I'd like to talk about Utica East Ohio. This is one of our crown jewel facilities across all of Access. Utica East Ohio is a joint venture partnership between Access, Momentum Midstream, and Enervest. The facility we're looking at here is the Kensington Cryogenic Processing Plant, and this is where up to 600 million a day of Utica-rich gas is flowing. Today, we have 2 trains that are in service up to 400 million a day, with the final 200 going in service later this year. Currently, this facility employs about 32 employees that operate the facility 24/7, and it went in service in July of 2013. And this is our Harrison Hub fractionation facility. It's in Scioto Township, which is in Harrison County. It's a 135,000 barrel fractionation facility. This facility, just like Kensington, did not exist prior to November of 2012. This, like Kensington, went in service in July of 2013. We're very proud of it, very excited. We have about 40 employees that work there 24/7. It's a manned facility, obviously. So enough about midstream. I'd like to talk about the 2020 outlook and why we're here today. The 2020 outlook is a projection of 400 million barrel equivalent of production per day. To change that and put in a different unit of measure that's a little more meaningful to me, and then to bring our big brother development, the Marcellus Shale, into the equation. The combined Utica Marcellus gas volume is headed towards 18 billion cubic feet per day of production. That's a remarkable number. It's changing the macro dynamics of the entire country, where gas is flowing from and to. In addition, they're estimating that 1 million barrels of oil will be produced on a daily basis out of the Utica and the Marcellus. However, beyond the volumes, our view is many other opportunities exist, such as the stimulative effect of these jobs that are created in the oil and gas industry, but moreover in the service companies, in the consultants, but also and most predominantly the long-term impact will be the energy-intensive industries. Things like refining industries and chemical industries, manufacturing, the industries that have made Eastern Ohio what it is for the last 100 to 200 years. We see this cheap, abundant fuel bringing a renaissance to those industries once again. As part of that, then, obviously, we foresee economic growth. We see conversion and continued conversion of coal-fired electric generation moving towards natural gas. There's been a substantial shift towards this direction in the east, but we see more of that occurring in the Midwest portion of the country, Southwest, and to the west as well. And additively, other markets like in Mexico, where there's an abundance of coal-fired generation that still needs to convert to cheap, abundant natural gas. Another is cleaner air. Natural gas has a fraction of the emissions and carbon footprint that you would see with other fossil fuels like coal. We also see greater consumer spending as a result. And don't get me wrong, we're not under the impression that somebody's going to buy a TV because of cheap, abundant fuel. But we feel like the economic effect associated with cheap, abundant fuel will create more jobs, which will create more economic stimulation, which at the end of the day will put more money in our pockets, the consumer. We also see greater U.S. energy security. Today, I found this to be an interesting fact, that U.S. exports more natural gas than Saudi Arabia. So we're seeing that macro effect associated with the shale revolution, and the Utica and the Marcellus are at the forefront of that development. Finally, we also see revenue infusion for the local governments and state-level governments associated with the revenues from this production and the permitting associated with it. So in conclusion, the oil and gas business has a strong heritage here in Ohio. The Utica has benefited from that strong heritage and will continue to carry that torch into developing the future. The region has proven oil and natural gas reserves that will go long into the future. As we all know, midstream and midstream infrastructure plays a critical part in being able to flow this natural resource. And we all know that Ohioans are an important part of this development now and into the future. Finally, it's our goal to support and improve the communities where we work. Thank you for your time today.